In Roman mythology, Saturn was the ruler of the gods. He had everything. He had power over the cosmos, over time, over the harvest, over the fate of every living thing. He was the supreme deity of the Roman pantheon before Jupiter and before any of the gods we recognize, and he ruled over a golden age when the world was young and everything was possible. And he was afraid. A prophecy had told him that one of his own children would grow up to overthrow him, that the thing he had created would destroy him, that the future would consume the present, as the present had consumed the past. So, Saturn did what a god does when he is afraid. He ate his children. Every child that his wife Ops bore him, Saturn took in his hands and put in his mouth, one by one, before they could grow, before they could become what the prophecy said they would become, before they could take from him what he had. He was the most powerful being in the universe, and the only thing that terrified him was his own children. This story has been painted hundreds of times. Rubens painted it, Poussin painted it. Every major painter of the classical tradition attempted it at some point, because the story is so extreme, so visceral, so philosophically loaded that it demands to be made visual. None of them painted it like Goya. Francisco Goya painted Saturn Devouring His Son between 1820 and 1823, when he was in his mid-70s, deaf, ill, and living alone in a house outside Madrid that people called the Quinta del Sordo, the house of the deaf man. He painted it directly on the wall. Not on canvas, not on a prepared surface that could be moved or sold or exhibited. On the plaster wall of his own dining room. He painted 14 images in this way, directly on the walls of the two main rooms of his house. They are known as the Black Paintings. They were never exhibited in his lifetime. They were never mentioned in any of his letters or notebooks. Nobody knew they existed until after his death. Goya painted Saturn devouring his son in his dining room and ate his meals in front of it every day for 3 years. Look at the painting. This is not the Saturn of Rubens. Rubens painted a dignified mythological scene. A god performing a terrible act with the gravity of divine necessity, the body of the child rendered with classical beauty, the whole composition organized according to the rules of historical painting. Goya painted something else entirely. Saturn is enormous. His eyes are wide, not with divine authority, but with terror. The specific expression on his face is not the expression of a god performing a necessary act. It is the expression of someone who cannot stop themselves, who knows what they are doing is monstrous and is doing it anyway, because the fear is greater than the horror. His hands grip the body with the specific grip of someone who is afraid to let go. He has already eaten the head and one arm. He is mid-act, mid-destruction, caught in the moment that no classical painter would paint because it is too specific, too physical, too honest about what the myth actually describes. Goya painted the moment of maximum horror because he was not interested in mythology. He was interested in fear. Who is Saturn in this painting? The official answer is a Roman god performing the act described in the myth. The real answer is more disturbing. By 1820, Goya had lived through the French invasion of Spain, the Peninsular War, the restoration of the absolute monarchy of Ferdinand VII, and the reimposition of the Inquisition. He had watched the liberal Spain he believed in destroyed by exactly the forces he had spent his career documenting and opposing. He was 74 years old. He was deaf. He had survived a serious illness in 1792 that had left him permanently weakened. He was living alone in a house outside Madrid, separated from the Spain he had known, surrounded by a world that had become unrecognizable. The Inquisition that had persecuted people like him was back. The Enlightenment values he had championed were being systematically dismantled. Everything he had worked for had been consumed. By what? By fear. By the fear of those in power that the future would take from them what they had. By the specific terror of Saturn, the terror of the powerful who destroy what they love because they cannot bear the thought of being replaced. Goya painted Saturn on his dining room wall because Saturn was everywhere. But there is another reading. Goya was not only painting the powerful who destroy, he was painting himself. By 1820, Goya had been the most celebrated painter in Spain for 50 years. He had been the court painter to 3 kings. He had painted the most powerful people in the country with an honesty that bordered on cruelty. He had documented the horrors of the Peninsular War and the disasters of war, a series of prints so brutal that they were not published until 35 years after his death. He had created an enormous body of work, and now he was painting over it. Not literally, but the black paintings, painted directly on the walls of his house, never exhibited, never sold, never even mentioned, were in some sense the opposite of his public career. They were paintings made for nobody, paintings that would be seen by no one except Goya himself, alone in his house, eating his meals in front of a god devouring his own children. What does it mean for a painter to make something that nobody will ever see? What does it mean to create something in the dark on a wall that will be demolished when you die for an audience of 1? Goya was not only painting the fear that consumes, he was painting the act of creation itself, the making of something that will not survive you, that you cannot protect, that the future will destroy regardless of what you do. Saturn eating his children is also a painter eating his own work, creating and destroying simultaneously, the act of making inseparable from the knowledge that what is made will be consumed. The black paintings were discovered after Goya's death in 1828. His house was inherited by his son Javier, who apparently had no idea the paintings existed, or if he did not know what to do with them. The house passed through several owners before being acquired in 1859 by a French banker named Baron Frédéric-Émile d'Erlanger. D'Erlanger commissioned a specialist to transfer the paintings from the walls to canvas, a technically extraordinary and extremely risky operation that took years. Several of the paintings were damaged in the process. Some were altered. Saturn Devouring His Son may have originally shown more of the body, and the lower portion of the composition was changed during the transfer. What we see today may not be exactly what Goya painted. The paintings were exhibited at the Paris Universal Exhibition of 1878 and then donated to the Prado Museum in Madrid, where they have been ever since. They are now among the most visited works in the Prado. People stand before Saturn Devouring His Son and feel something that is difficult to name. Not the appreciation of a masterpiece. Something more uncomfortable than that. The specific feeling of looking at a painting made in total darkness by a man who had no reason to make it, except that he could not stop himself. The question that Goya's black paintings raise, and that nobody has fully answered, is why? Why did he paint them? He was old. He was ill. He was living alone. He had no audience, no patron, no reason to produce 14 large-scale paintings on the walls of a house he expected to die in. The conventional answer is that the black paintings were a form of private expression, that Goya was working through his fears and his despair in the only way he knew how. But this explanation is too comfortable, because the black paintings are not therapeutic. They are not the record of someone processing their feelings. They are finished works. They have the compositional control, the technical mastery, the specific intentionality of a painter at the height of his powers, making exactly what he means to make. Goya painted Saturn Devouring His Son in his dining room not because he needed to express something. He painted it because it was true. The god who eats his children because he is afraid of them is not a myth. It is a description of power, of what power does when it feels threatened, of the specific mechanism by which everything that has been built is eventually consumed by the thing that built it. Goya had watched this happen his entire life. He painted it on his wall so he would not forget. The next time you see Saturn Devouring His Son in a reproduction, in the Prado, on a screen, look at Saturn's eyes. He is not looking at what he is eating. He is looking at you. Not with the expression of a god, with the expression of someone who knows exactly what they are doing and cannot stop. That is not a mythological painting, that is a mirror. If this changed the way you see a painting you thought was just about a myth, share it with someone who thinks they know what fear looks like. And if you want to go deeper into the artists, the secrets, and the masterpieces that contain the truths we were never supposed to find, subscribe to Hidden Canvas. He painted it on his wall. He ate his meals in front of it every day. He knew exactly what it meant.